One admin note before I get going. This was a live in-person interview, so there are a few times when I'm talking to or about someone else in the studio that was off mic, and the person is Captain Conrad Littlefield, who is Major General Bauer's aide. So he got to listen in but didn't have a mic, which in hindsight was too bad because I asked him a couple of times to chime in and I didn't get a chance to catch the audio. Anyway, thanks to Captain Littlefield, who also came out of a recruiting station prior to his aide job and is also someone who served with 1-8 in the evacuation of H-Kaya. This in-person interview would have been way harder to coordinate if he had not been on the ball. So Conrad, thanks, really appreciate it. Okay, before I jump into the actual episode, would you do me a quick favor and pause and leave a review on Apple or Spotify? I'd really appreciate it. It takes like 5 seconds and it really helps with visibility too. And here's why. The reviews are kind of a double-edged sword, right? You get them and that's great, but then people see that the last one was back in October of 24, and a newcomer may look at that and say, well, can this be any good if there hasn't been a review in 4 or 5 months? So that's one of the real big reasons why I'm asking. So if you like this, if you wouldn't mind just taking a second and going over and doing that, it would be helpful. So, okay, welcome to the first episode of Moments in Leadership for 2025. This month marks the 4th anniversary of this project, which is kind of amazing because I feel like I just started it yesterday. But thanks for being a part of this journey. This episode is with Major General Bill Bowers, who is the Commanding General of Marine Corps Recruiting Command and is also a very old friend of mine from my days as a very young lieutenant. But before we get going, I need to give a quick personal thank you to 2 new Supercast supporters helping out with offsetting the cost of productions. That's Jonathan Graham at the Buy Me a Beer level and Daniel Fitzgerald at the Hot Wash level. Guys, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Without you and all the other supporters helping out, this would just be a much bigger challenge. Your contribution to the project really helps me defer the cost of this episode, which aren't insignificant. So anyway, big thanks to all of you who have stuck with the support that you offer. Again, I just appreciate it. Okay, so like I said, this episode is with Major General Bill Bowers, and I've been excited about this episode for a while because I know from my Instagram account that this project is widely followed by members of the recruiting command. So I'm hoping that it provides you some relief from the long drives and the long days that you all put in. I do believe in the saying that everyone is a recruiter, including old farts like me, but anyway, just remember to keep up the good work and that you just never know what that next phone call or that next meeting is going to yield. And as you'll hear in this episode, just get out there and be seen. Okay, so throughout Major General Bauer's career, he has served in every Marine Expeditionary Force, in every element of the Marine Air Ground Task Force, and in most parts of the supporting establishment. He was commissioned in 1990 after graduating from VMI, Virginia Military Institute, with a degree in history. After completing the basic school and Marine Corps Engineer School, he served in a variety of assignments across the 1st Marine Expeditionary Brigade in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii from 91 to 94. And he also deployed to Southwest Asia during that time and lots of other locations in the Pacific. In June of 1994, he reported to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, and served as a series commander and then a company commander and the regimental S3 Alpha. And after graduating from the U.S. Army Engineer Officer Advanced Course in May of 97, he reported to 7th Engineer Support Battalion at Camp Pendleton, California, and served as the S3 Alpha. Also the Charlie Company Commander and the battalion's operations officer, and then finally the executive officer. In June of 2000, he reported to Recruiting Station Lansing, Michigan, and he served as the commanding officer there until July of 03, when he then reported to the Naval Command and Staff College in Newport, Rhode Island, and from there went on to attend the School of Advanced Warfighting in Quantico, Virginia. He checked into 3MEF in Okinawa in 2005, and then he served as the Operational Planning Team branch head for G3 Future Ops. From Okinawa, he deployed to Iraq and served as a plans team leader for Multinational Force Iraq. And then he assumed command of Marine Wing Support Squadron 273 out of Beaufort, South Carolina in May of 07. So after deploying with the squadron to Operation Iraqi Freedom in 08 and 09, he relinquished command in May of 09 and then reported as a student to the National War College in Washington, D.C. By June of 2010, he ended up reporting over to the Joint Staff J5 Directorate as the Strategy Concepts Branch Chief. From 2012 to 2015, he commanded the 6th Marine Corps Recruit District, Marine Corps Recruit Depot Parasite Parris Island, South Carolina. And then from 2015 to 2017, he served as the military assistant to the 33rd and the 34th Assistant Commandants of the Marine Corps, Generals Paxton and Walters. By July of 2017, upon selection to Brigadier General, he was assigned as the President, Marine Corps University and Commanding General, Education Command. In June of 2019, he assumed duties as the Commanding General, Marine Corps Installations Pacific in Okinawa, Japan, and then he went on to assume his current command of Marine Corps Recruiting Command in July of 2022. His personal decorations include Legion of Merit with a Gold Star, Bronze Star, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal with an Oak Leaf Cluster, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal with 2 Gold Stars, the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal, and the Humanitarian Service Medal. He was the Combat Engineer Officer of the Year in 1998 and has received several academic and writing awards. And with that,
I'm here with Major General Bill Bowers. Although, do you go by William officially?
Bill, I go by Bill.
I thought so too.
Bill,
Somebody DM'd me the other day and was like, because I put out a little teaser that you and I were recording this, and they're like, "Do you mean William Bowers?" I'm like, well, I don't know if you.
I don't
formally. Maybe,
I think if you have to Google, the Marine Corps probably counts me as William because that's how they list my bio and all that.
Plus, let's face it, there's probably only 25 people in the Marine Corps that call you Bill anymore. Yeah. So like everybody else is calling you General Bowers. So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So thanks for being on the podcast. Yep. But as we started recording this, Captain Littlefield, Conrad Littlefield is your aide and sitting here with us as we're recording this. And he and I have a friend in common, Mitchell Teefee. And he's out in RS Sacramento.
Yeah.
Now I got to know Captain Teefee, and you two were platoon commanders together at 1-8. So the whole Afghan evacuation, you guys were platoon commanders together, right? So I got to know him because when I was in ROTC, back when you and I were pre-name tapes on the Camis days, right, as I like to say. And I was a senior in ROTC and I had a flight contract. And I've told this story before in the podcast, but I had a friend of mine who was killed in a train accident down in Pensacola, who was ahead of me out of the ROTC unit. And his family decided to give away a sword with his name and a saying inscribed on the sword, and it was on the scabbard, and it was going to be given to a graduating senior commissioned out of the ROTC. Well, there were only 2 seniors being commissioned in May that year, and it was me and a MECEP who never knew my friend Ken Smith. And for listeners, if you've heard my episode with General Hazel, he and I talk about the story because he was friends with my friend Ken Smith. There were politics involved, and it was the Navy ROTC staff, right? The Navy lieutenants and the MOI, and they got to vote on who got that award, and they gave it to the MECEP because he had a better grade point average than me or something. Everybody had a better grade point average than me, whatever. But I was pissed, right? Yeah. Just pissed. And because I felt like this guy didn't even know my friend. How could they do this to me? So when I had the economic means to do so, I decided to fix this problem. And I went back down to the University of South Carolina to the MOI and I said, I want to give away an award to a graduating senior. I don't care if they're Navy or Marines, but it's going to be the Richard B. Armstrong Leadership Award named after my father. I would pay for the commissioning uniform of whoever wins the award. So I like it when the Navy guys win it more than Marines, but just because it's like way cheaper. But so I write a check for their uniforms. I reimburse them for their commissioning uniform. But the whole deal is they are voted. The vote is done by the midshipman battalion and not the staff. And I've mandated that in the thing, like, this is an award of your peers for leadership. Like, who of your colleagues in the ROTC unit, the other midshipmen, feel you were the most influential to them, whether you're a freshman or a junior or another senior. They vote on it. And Teefee won it. Because that's how I got to know him. Cool. So and he's one of your guys out there in the field.
Peer leadership really is the coin of the realm, right?
Yeah.
Getting voted by your peers, the respect of your peers.
That brings us to, let's start talking about your lieutenant days, because we shared those lieutenant days together. So for people who don't know, you and I have been friends for a long time. And we actually met after our first lieutenant tours. Like, I don't know if they still call it a B billet, but we were on our B billets, basically, right? And you were at MCRD San Diego.
Right.
I was at First Anglo, and we lashed up through a mutual friend, Tom Freer, and we started surfing together. Right? And you were way better than I was, but still, I enjoyed it. And when you think about the lieutenant days, the peer leadership that takes place at the lieutenant level, there is no group of people, and I'm looking over at Captain Littlefield a little bit too, to see if he'll acknowledge this or not, but like that Lieutenant Protective Association is a lot more than just an LPA in name. Like, that is your moral compass. No one will tell you faster that you're messing up as a lieutenant than your other lieutenant buddies.
Yeah.
And I feel like our group of lieutenants, we're all still pretty close friends, was such a huge influence on my career. And I'm wondering, like, how was your lieutenant, your LPA we called the Lieutenant Protective Association. I think they renamed it, but it's still LPA, but whatever. What was your LPA like?
So, I did my first tour in Hawaii. And I guess the first thing was that me and a bunch of lieutenants all pooled our resources and rented a house, right close to Kailua Beach. It was me, it was Tom Freer, Bubba Salasco.
Oh, God, that's a name I haven't heard for a long time.
Phil Woodley, and then Mike Delamico came in, and we were all on different deployment cycles. And, we all used to, Sunday nights, we'd have little barbecues. There was a little pool at our house, and we'd talk about how we were leading our platoon. We'd trade notes, but we're also competing with each other. It's a friendly competition, but those lieutenant days, you had to deliver, right? You had to be fit. Everyone's PTing their butts off. Everyone's deploying. We're learning as much as we can. We're leading our Marines, and we were having fun. I remember the lieutenant days just being a lot of fun.
Me too.
A lot of deployments, a lot of PT, learning new things like surfing, right? And then you become like addicted to it. And then we're grabbing our surfboards and going out there at lunch when we're back at Kaneohe Bay, working up for the next deployment. And then when you do deploy, you're out there and you're seeing your lieutenants. And in Hawaii, you remember Lieutenant General Jim Glenn,
Sure.
Then Lieutenant Jim Glenn. I remember he had 81's platoon from 3-3. He was really strong. Wayne Sinclair was down there at Combat Engineers. He was really strong. Dave West, who I went to VMI with, was in 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. It was just a really strong, tight LPA. Did a lot of things together. On Liberty, deployed together, and just had fun.
Yeah.
The lieutenant days, especially that first fleet tour, was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think it's funny when I think back on it, because I was in 29 Palms. So the lieutenant group was socially very strong and very broad across the base, because every single lieutenant was in the same boat. There was not a whole lot to do at 29 Palms. So we all, whether you were a lieutenant in 511 or 17, it didn't kind of matter. That group of, let's just call it 100 lieutenants, were all really tight regardless of what unit you were in.
So I remember when I met you, right? So Tom Freer and I were in Hawaii together. We were roommates in Hawaii. He was an infantry officer in 1-3, and we came back. I got stationed at MCRD San Diego, and I think it was you, Jay Manley, Ned Freer, right? You were in Anglico,
Yep,
I think,
I was
at
at
the time.
Anglico with Jay and
Right.
Ned Freer, Tom's brother.
Ned Freer, yeah, Tom's brother,
Yep.
Ned. And then we all met in the lineup at
Did.
Tamaracks.
We were all like, it was
Right?
like, yeah,
We were
just
surfing out there.
We were just surfing. And then, of course, this was after, when I was at Anglico, I was obviously down at Pendleton at the time. Yeah, that's how we met. But I think about, even in our social time, there was this level of accountability.
Yes.
I'll use drinking and driving as an example, right? Like, we were accountable to each other for making sure, like, who's the designated driver.
Right.
Like, we were accountable for making sure that each other wasn't messing up,
That's right. We took care of each other.
Yeah, we did. We did.
We did.
And so it's funny, maybe if captains probably understand this, but maybe sergeants and staff sergeants don't. Like, the level of accountability that happens at the lieutenant level in your command is way more pervasive than anybody probably thinks it is, because lieutenants will tell other lieutenants really quick, like, you're messing up, dude.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And I think getting with the right group of lieutenants, right? I mean, so when your lieutenant buds are all like-minded, competitive, like leading Marines, like deploying, like getting out there, like the outdoors, right? We were just, I just remember being outdoors a lot, always doing a lot of stuff together.
Right.
And it was just a really good lifestyle, right? Really good camaraderie, really great bunch of friends.
Right.
To be around. And we had fun too,
We
right?
did.
I mean, so we took care of each other, but we went to Social Distortion concerts. I see your Hootie and the Blowfish. I think we went and saw Hootie and the Blowfish together at the Belly Up Tavern. Yeah, right? Belly Up Tavern. So we had fun together too, but it was just a really great time to be a company grade officer in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, we were really good. Here's the other thing I think that's really interesting too, and maybe this is a great leadership question or a topic to explore together, but we didn't have cell phones.
No.
Right? We didn't.
No.
When I was at Anglico, I had a pager.
Yeah.
Like a drug dealer.
Yeah.
And that was the only way that anybody could get in touch with you. We had an alert status that you had to be responsible for calling in every hour.
Yeah.
Unless you had a pager, so everybody just got a pager and be called in. But we didn't have the cell phone. So if one of your Marines got in trouble on a Friday night or a Saturday, nobody really found out about it until Monday morning.
Right.
You'd walk into work.
I mean, the duty may call you at home on the
Sure.
weekend if it
If
was
you
like
were
really
home.
in trouble. Yeah,
Right.
if you were home, right, the duty would call you. But yeah,
Yeah, it
we
was
didn't have
just-
cell phones.
And so when we were off, we were off. I mean, we were.
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
We didn't have that sort of cloud of the text, like getting the text message from the boss on a Saturday or anything like that. That may have added to some of the fun that doesn't exist anymore.
I didn't have a cell phone until I was a RSCO in Lansing, Michigan. And I remember how awkward it was to get this Nextel, this big clunky cell phone.
Yeah.
Time I had one.
And even when you had a cell phone, you didn't use it that much because it was expensive.
Right.
It was by the minute.
Right.
So it wasn't like free,
Right.
talk as much as you want. I don't even think people talk on the phone anymore anyway. So, but it's all text messages. But
It was a really tough time, remember, to stay in the Marine Corps because we were downsizing post-Cold War and augmentation was less than 10%.
it's terrible.
And we saw some really great lieutenants who wanted to stay in the Marine Corps get shown the door. These were great officers, great lieutenants. And it was because they were commissioned through the PLC program, vice the ROTC or the Naval Academy.
Which is different now, right?
Which is different now. Everyone has to compete for augmentation. But you remember back then, you had a regular commission, Naval Academy and ROTC, and you had a reserve commission, PLC, and you had to augment on active duty.
Right. Or college program through RTC if you didn't have a scholarship. Yeah.
And it was less than 10% augmentation. And we had some great lieutenants get shown the door.
You'd have one lieutenant out of each regiment per year, basically, is what it was. And it was like a board.
Yeah, right.
It was-
Divisions and regiments were having, and air wings were having boards
Yeah.
for who their number 1 and 2 lieutenant was going to be out of the 30 applying for augmentation.
Right, right.
It's crazy.
Also, I think this was back when our ID cards were different.
Yeah,
If you were on active duty, you had a green ID card. If you were a reservist, you had a red ID card.
that's right.
And on your ID card, if you were not a regular commission, so like you said, Naval Academy, ROTC scholarship, your ID said USMCR on it, even though you're on active duty for your first 4 years. Yeah, we saw a lot. And that was also the drawdown too. That was the Clinton era, drawing down, post-Desert Storm. It wasn't a fun time to be in the Marine Corps unless you were on a MEU. The MEUs had all the money, and that's where you did all of your training.
Remember, the MEUs got the most deployed, from the East and West Coast, the MEUs got the most deployed time. Of course, in Hawaii, they had the unit deployment program to Okinawa, and they had all the PTA
Oh, right.
deployments out to the Pahakaloa training area. But yeah, the MEUs were the crown jewel of the Marine Corps.
So tell the listeners what Second Lieutenant Bill Bowers was like, because I know, but they don't.
So
Like, what were some of your struggles? If you look back on your lieutenant time, what were some of the things you think to yourself, like, that really took me a long time to figure that out? Because we don't all come out of the basic school minted as the best officers in the world. There's a
yeah.
huge learning process there.
I think, I probably came out of TBS and Combat Engineer School more like, the Tigger and Winnie the Pooh, very enthusiastic, not always as much focus. Some would say I'm still like that. But so I remember getting to Hawaii, I think it was like May 5th, 1991. And I deployed less than 10 days later to Southwest Asia for the retrograde operations from Desert Storm. We were over there for like 4 or 5 months. And I had a rifle platoon. They thought they were going to take some combat engineer casualties in the breach of Desert Storm. So they made more combat engineers from our TBS class than they normally do.
Oh, okay.
They didn't take the casualties they thought, got out to Hawaii. The MEB G1 asked me when I'm checking in on my alphas, did you pay attention to TBS? And I said, well, yes, yes, sir, I did. He said, well, we're going to give you a rifle platoon. You're ready to deploy. And my car hadn't made it. My stuff hadn't made it. I mean, I hadn't even made it from the mainland to Hawaii yet. I had agreed with some of my TBS buds that we were all going to go into a house together. So I had managed to sign a lease so I could get my BAH coming in to chip in. And then I deployed.
Wow.
We were in Southwest Asia. I was in command of 54 young Marines.
What month? That was
in May 1991.
91, yeah.
Yeah, and what our mission was we were a provisional infantry battalion, stood up at a 3rd Marine Regiment, and we were providing convoy security for all the ammunition that had to get backloaded. We'd made all these ammunition supply points, expecting a much longer war than we actually had, so we had to guard those and then provide security for those, as all those were retrograded from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
getting back. But it was real good leadership experience, good training, a good learning.
You basically went to the field right away.
Went to the field right
Right.
away.
So,
Went to the field right
you
away.
pick up this provisional rifle
Yeah.
platoon. Who's your platoon sergeant?
So platoon sergeant was a staff sergeant.
Combat engineer also?
No, he was a air command and control, but he had 0311. He was like a 0311. So he had 03 experience, and then he lat moved and he came back. I remember my platoon guide was terrific. It was a sergeant, and then he was promoted on deployment to Staff Sergeant Ansel Evans, and he was actually a squad leader for Second Lieutenant Jim Glenn when he was in India Company, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marine. So he had deployed for Desert Storm with then Lieutenant Glenn's platoon, came back, volunteered to go right back and get another deployment. And so he was my platoon guide, and he became a staff sergeant on that deployment, and he was very good. He was very good. So we had really good squad. Platoon sergeant was okay, but the guide was terrific.
Did you have any like aha moments as a second lieutenant that you come out of TBS and you think you're ready, but you're just not?
Oh, geez.
And so there's this huge learning curve, and I say this all the time on the podcast, like probably the most influential relationship you'll ever have as a new officer is your platoon sergeant, because a lieutenant will maybe have at tops 2 platoon sergeants before they cycle out and do something else, but a platoon sergeant could have 12 lieutenants. Right? Like there's this huge disparity of influence there. And so I'm kind of curious, like if you look back on your initial experience deploying right away, being thrown into a group of people that you hadn't really trained with yet in a real life scenario, what were some lessons learned?
I guess the first lesson learned was we stood a commanding general's inspection before we deployed, and it was General Livingston, and he was a Medal of Honor winner, and I had just gotten the platoon. So I was standing up there. It was right on the parade ground, right in front of the brigade headquarters. Now it's the Marine Corps Base Hawaii headquarters, but that was the brigade headquarters, and we were on that parade ground. We had all our deuce gear laid out. So I reported the platoon to General Livingston, and he was a 1-star at the time. So he starts walking through, looking at the deuce gear, talking to the Marines, and he started asking the Marines pretty detailed questions. He saw an African-American Marine who had some bumps on his skin. So he says to the Marine, make sure you write your family, where you're from, good luck to your son. And he looked to me, he said, Lieutenant, this Marine looks like he has some problems shaving. What shaving program have you and the corpsman worked out for him? I have an answer. So he clapped my shoulder hard and kind of squeezed and said, all right, now, Lieutenant, these are your Marines. You got to take care of them. He's walking through, he sees a private. And he says, all right, private, how long have you been here? When were you supposed to be promoted? When are you going to get promoted? And the private said, well, I was supposed to get promoted last month. He said, okay, have you reported this to your squad leader? Yes, sir. He said, do you know who your squad leader is? He says, yes, Corporal Bister. So General Livingston says, okay, well, your chain of command is going to take care of your son, and we're going to work and get you promoted. And he looked at me and kind of scowled. Lieutenant, you got some answers for me? He basically asked me like 4 or 5 questions, and I didn't have one answer to anything he had asked. And he got in front, when we were done, I got back in front of the platoon. He says, Lieutenant, I didn't make an excuse. I didn't tell him I'd just gotten there. He says, Lieutenant, you obviously got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
He said, you're in command now. You're responsible and accountable for these Marines. I expect you to take care of them. Now you get busy and you get to work. And he kind of, Medal of Honor winner, and he kind of dressed me down. He was a 1-star.
1-star.
So he kind of said, you're not in college anymore. You got a lot of work to do. You better get to it and get some answers. And then as he kind of walked away, he kind of saluted before I saluted. And it just was terrible. It was a rude awakening for me. Like, all right, I'm in charge of these Marines. I've got to get with my people and get some answers.
Yeah.
And I later talked to the company commander. He says, yeah, I know you were new, and it's just, you got through it. But that was an important lesson, ask questions, learn, get to know your people. And then, really use your staff NCOs and use those squad leaders and get to know everything about them.
Yeah.
I fortunately had that experience to deploy right away and get that experience.
Yeah.
The other thing I guess I learned as a lieutenant, I didn't learn it with that platoon, but my first engineer platoon is, showing grace for your Marines. Your Marines are going to make some mistakes, but showing grace too. They're young. They're 18 to 24. We all made mistakes when we were 18 to 24.
I didn't.
They're going to make mistakes is sometimes showing grace, you know? So I got a good story about showing grace too.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I learned some lessons with that platoon. So we came back and now I got a combat engineer platoon after that deployment. And as you had mentioned, this is a time when we're drawn down, right?
Yeah.
So if you remember those times, if you had 2 adverse entries in your book, you were going to get processed for administrative separation. And
You mean on the officer side, enlisted side?
And enlisted
right.
side,
so
right?
like a page 11.
A page 11
right.
and an NJP, so I had a Marine in my engineer platoon. He was a corporal. Then he was reduced to lance corporal for fighting at the barracks. This was after they got back from Desert Storm. And, he's probably had too much to drink, and he's mouthing off to the duty one night and gets reported. So he's looking at another NJP, right? So here it is. And now Sergeant Major is wanting to process him for administrative separation because, 2 NJPs post Desert Storm. So this comes to me, and then I get a letter from the kid's dad. And the kid's dad was a Marine. And the kid's dad had fought in Vietnam. The kid's dad basically wrote to me as Second Lieutenant Bowers. He said, can you get this Marine, get Lance Corporal Williams, Wesley Williams, help him get to his EAS so he can get an honorable discharge. He says, I'm a former Marine. I fought in Vietnam. He did his job in Desert Storm. Please do what you can to help him get that. Kind of appealed to, tugged on my heartstrings. Well, the Sergeant Major was pressing hard to, add SEPM. And this is where the Corps is going, right? You get 2 NJPs, we're moving you along. So I remember I wrote squadron commander a letter, a personal letter to let me see if I could help this Marine, save this Marine. You idealistic second lieutenant, you want to have an impact, positive impact on your people to get him to his EAS. And I went to his house on a Sunday afternoon, and I actually delivered a handwritten letter. And the commander's like, doing here, Bill? I said, well, sir, I just want you to give me a chance to try to get Lance Corporal Williams to his EAS. And he says, well, Sergeant Major, it's been pretty clear, your Marines aren't behaving down there, and you got to get a handle on that platoon. I said, sir, I know, I just want a chance to get him to his EAS. If we can just get him 4 months, I think I can get him there. Give me a chance. He says, well, I'll take a look at your letter. Left it inconclusive. So that week, get a call to come up there. I'm going to let you work with this Marine. I'm going to let you try to get him to his EAS, but you get a handle on that platoon. We can't have him mouthing off to our duties at the barracks and getting in fights. I said, sir, got it. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, a couple weeks later, out at Pyramid Rock, Lance Corporal Williams is out there with his buddy, Corporal Sisk, and they're at the beach. And then there's 2 kids, like an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, who are getting swept out to sea in a current. And Lance Corporal Williams takes a boogie board, he's got his fins, jumps out there, he saves 2 kids.
Whoa, awesome.
He goes out there, he saves 2 kids, and then he brings them back. So I find out about this. I said, well, it gets reported. So I remember, we need to write him up for an award. And I checked the conditions, and yes, it was dangerous. I drove over to Pearl Harbor. I got statements from the parents of the kids. I met the kids, and everything was written up, and I submitted them for an award. Not the Navy Marine Corps medal. I think that you have to have your own life in danger. But I believe it was a Navy Com or a Navy Achievement medal, but it was a good medal. And the Sergeant Major, of course,
oh boy,
saw this and said, this Marine should have been kicked out. Now we're talking about giving him a medal. He didn't support it. He said, well, we have statements. We have eyewitness statements. And here's the other thing, right? So I reported this up my chain, which is the fleet chain. Well, the lifeguard on the air station side also made a report of it, right? So this is going up. It gets reported through the station, the air station commander. So it all kind of meets at the MEB commanding general, which was Brigadier General Kuhn at the time. So I remember talking to my squadron commander. He was like, Bill, we got this Marine here who has these NJPs, but he saved these 2 kids. So they decided, well, let's make it a CG Circom. That way we're not giving them a medal. They went back and forth on this, but then the station side is like, hey, he saved these kids' lives.
Yeah.
So, well, here's what happened, right? So I guess this goes up to General Kuhn. And knowing now how general officers talk, our squadron had a training exercise in the field, and we were out at Bellows Air Force Base. And we were doing land navigation, patrolling, airfield security, all these things. And we had a field mess night planned at the end of the week. And General Christmas, Major General Christmas, from Way City, he was a PACOM J5 at the time. He was scheduled to be the guest of honor at the mess night. And General Kuhn was going to be there too. And I was friends with General Kuhn's aide. General Kuhn's aide was a, infantry officer named Bill Visted. And while all this churn was going on, I didn't know what was going to happen. You're right, with Lance Corporal Williams, I'm just leading the platoon and we're getting through the exercise. And Visted tells me, he says, hey, Bill, when General Kuhn comes out to the mess night, he's coming, General Christmas is the guest of honor, but General Kuhn's coming. Have Lance Corporal Williams available. General Kuhn wants to meet him. So I said, okay, well, we'll have him as a messman. Is there any plan? He said, no, just have him available. So when the general wants to meet him, he can meet him, but he's going to be at the mess night. So I said, roger that. So we made sure Lance Corporal Williams is a messman, serving chow or they're at the field mess night. So, and again, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Which is probably scary, right?
It's scary. We don't.
Right. You got a general officer, you can relate to it now, but back then, right?
Yeah. So General Christmas gives this, this incredible speech, combat leadership in Way City. He talks about the 4 C's, courage, candor, competence, compassion. He relates it to battlefield experiences. It's this living legend of the Corps, right? And he's up there talking, and there's about 100 of us, all officers and staff NCOs. We're at this field mess night under tents, and we're gungy and just feeling great. So General Christmas concludes his speech. He gets a standing ovation. So the squadron commander gave him a gift and said, thank you for sharing these inspiring words of this General Christmas, and presented him the gift and said, here's, to the hero of Way City. And General Christmas was very humble, right? And General Christmas, he accepted the gift. So we're all clapping and talking. And General Christmas gets up there and he says, okay, he didn't like being called the hero of Way City. Got up in front and then he said, I'll never forget it. Never forget it. He said, Marines, get on your feet for a real hero. And his aide said, Lance Corporal Williams, report to General Christmas. So he's in the back. He didn't know what's going on.
Right.
He's a messman.
He's got the white hat on and everything.
Yeah. This Lance Corporal, he's serving. So we're all at attention, and he comes up and he reports to General Christmas. He's like trembling. And the aide reads the citation for how he had gone into the water, saved these 2 kids.
Yeah.
And General Christmas pinned the medal on him, took a picture of him, and then everyone gets on their feet.
So he got a medal.
He gets the medal. He gets the standing ovation. And, I was just thinking like, wow, this kid was going to be kicked out of the Marine Corps 3 months ago. And I know what happens now with general officers, right? General Kuhn had obviously gotten this, looked for advice from someone who he looked up to as a mentor, right? It's General Christmas.
Right.
General Christmas takes the facts in, understand. General Christmas says, I got it. I'm going to present the medal to him.
That's
and
awesome.
when General Christmas presents the medal, that's it.
Right. There's no more
Right?
Sergeant Major.
I mean, there's
no more board.
That's it.
Right.
That's it. And the Marine got his honorable discharge and went on, and, I was just thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
The lieutenants are idealistic.
Yeah.
Lieutenants believe their leadership can change these young Marines and have a positive impact. And then over time, right, sometimes people let you down, Marines let you down.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go through the captain and then the majors. And at the major stage, you're like, you got to hold these Marines accountable because you've been burned a couple of times. And then
Right.
lieutenant colonel. And I guess now where I am here as a 2-star, I'm kind of back to the idealistic second. We need those idealistic second lieutenants and captains.
Yeah.
We absolutely need them.
Well, I think we need idealistic general officers too.
We do.
Right. And I'll share a quick story too. Yeah. Like when I went out to that ITX with then Lieutenant General Bellin, because Sergeant Major Ruiz was his sergeant major. Yeah. And so I was out there with them, and those guys, they were out there like Patton with a box full of medals. Yeah. And they would go and they would address, like, I don't know, anytime the general says, hey, I want to talk to the Marines, that's never a casual thing. There's an hour of ass pain that goes into getting them all into a bleacher or whatever. Like, right. That's never a casual thing. So they're all in the bleachers or whatever. Like, hey, so when General Bellin and Sergeant Major Ruiz say like, hey, the general wants to talk to the Marines real quick. Like in General Bellin's mind, he's like, hey, school circle real quick. Like, I just want to say hi and whatever. Yeah. They're all formed up and all this stuff. And
right.
which is kind of funny.
Right.
I guess there's no stopping that, right? But that's just how it went down.
I know. I see that. You don't want
like,
any.
I just want to say hi.
Yeah.
Right? I just want to say hi.
I know.
So he stands in front of the bleachers and says, it starts asking Marines like, okay, who are the 3 platoon sergeants here? And so the 3 platoon sergeants for this, whatever. And they'll get up and he'll say like, what, by name, who's one of the Marines that you think just really did a great job here at Range 410 or whatever? And he'd say, Lance Corporal so-and-so, right? And he'd say, Lance Corporal so-and-so, how long have you been like, now he's standing up talking general and everything like that. And he said, and then he would look at the whole bleachers and say, how many people here think that Lance Corporal Smith deserves a Navy Achievement Medal? Do you know him? And would like literally point at a Marine just out of the blue. Do you know Lance Corporal Smith? Do you? Yes, sir. Advocate right now why I should give him a Navy Achievement Medal. Be like, well, sir, Lance Corporal Smith did this, that, and the other thing. And next thing you know, this box comes out. Right? It's like Patton with a box full of medals.
That is so awesome. It's such a powerful leadership tool.
Yeah, he's got his aide, Major Gones. She's walking around with some bag full of, stuff. And then there's Sergeant Major Ruiz right there signing the cardboard box, right, as the incoming Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. Like that box is probably worth more to the Marines signed by the Sergeant Major and Lieutenant General Bellin than the actual like write-up that you put in a frame and then 30 years later you kind of just scan it and throw it away. But it's awesome to see that kind of stuff. You're right. There's some sort of boy, I could go off on medals for like an hour and a half, but
what you just said though, right? What General Bellin did, awards should be swift, public, and generous.
Why is there this huge quagmire with awards? Like, okay,
I don't know.
I'm going to go off on a little bit of tangent here, and this really isn't a moment in leadership thing, but let's talk about it for 1 second. Because like I just saw this thing about the Air Force awarding the Silver Stars to those pilots. Yeah. Do you see that? Okay. The thing that amazed me the most about that was they got those medals inside of 8 months.
Yeah.
So we can have a debate about whether or not what they did merit. Okay. Forget that for a second.
Yeah.
Administratively, that thing was done in 8 months. Yeah. I feel like in the Marine Corps, we have people coming back in suits and ties to get their Silver Stars because they've been out for 5 years before. Like, I don't know where we don't get that right, but I
don't know. It's funny though. I remind the staff, right? I'm in my 3rd command as a general officer now. When I'll see awards board and things will come in, as I'll remind you guys, my guidance on award is real simple. 3 words: swift, public, generous.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where it gets all messed up, but I also don't remember, and maybe this is a function of me getting off active duty as a captain, but I don't remember awards boards. I just remember we didn't have what's it called? IAPS?
IAPS,
right. We didn't have that. You just got on the typewriter and you banged that thing out and printed it off, and it went somewhere and got signed and came back from the ADG or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I don't remember boards for like awards. I remember like maybe the battalion commander would be like, it's down, whatever, but
I think it's get inflated and they want boards to kind of discipline the process. I believe in the process, but execute the process as quickly as you can.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't let them sit in inboxes for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Execute the process. So reward the Marine so he can receive it in front of the peers and the Marines he or she did it with, I think in MCRIC, in Marine Corps Recruiting Command, I think we're pretty good at that.
We're fast forwarding now from your lieutenant time to your general officer time, but so we'll come back to all the other stuff.
Okay,
in the middle, but like, tell me about awards that come to your desk. What level
So awards that come to my desk will be the awards that really can't be awarded by the region commanding generals and the district commanders. So those are really service level awards.
Give me an example.
So Legions of Merit.
Okay.
A Legion of Merit, that'll be signed off by the commandant.
It is. Okay.
Yeah. So on the Marine Corps Recruiting Command staff, like a Meritorious Service Medal, retirement awards, I generally see the big award, a lot of retirement awards, significant accomplishments to the institution.
Okay. When they come to your desk, is there still debating going on? Or do you ever say like, hey, can somebody brief me up on what's going on with this award? Like, or by the time it gets to you, is it vetted and
They're normally pretty vetted. Occasionally there's ties or like awards boards, like some will think Legion of Merit, some will think really, really good, but doesn't rise to the level of significant sustained accomplishment, to the institution over a sustained period of time. I tell you where I come down though on the generosity side.
Yeah.
I just do. I think because there's so many times when Marines do great work that is not recognized or people don't see it. So, right, this is what's seen and captured here in this write-up. What's not seen is all the other stuff that didn't get captured. And a lot of Marines are selfless, right? They don't want the spotlight on them. They don't achieve great things to just get an award. They do it to make the Corps better, to make a positive contribution.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I err on the generous side.
Listen, I hope everybody hears you say that.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, that's just, and if for captains out there and majors, my guidance is real clear: swift, public, generous. Do it swiftly, do it publicly, be generous.
That's a good mantra. We shouldn't be taking 5 years to give people Purple Hearts, like that Medal of Honor for Sergeant First Class Cash. Like, I mean, my God, come on, there's
Right.
20 years,
Right.
And the data hasn't changed. The story hasn't changed, right? It happened.
Right.
Okay, we got off on a tangent. So talk to me about your time when you finished up your lieutenant time and you got orders, MCRD San Diego. Did you volunteer for that? Or did your monitor come down and say like, hey, I got news for you, Bill, you're going to MCRD San Diego?
Pretty much. I mean, lieutenants completing their fleet tour. You remember those times. Augmentation was really tough.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
General Mundy was the commandant, getting ready to transition to General Krulak. It was, the mantra was making Marines winning battles.
Yep.
That was General Krulak's mantra. And, the fleet was kind of the winning battles side, and lieutenants leaving the fleet after a successful fleet tour, especially in the combat arms, right? You were either going to go recruiting duty, recruit training, or TBS, because
that was kind of it, right?
There are about 75 captains at either MCRD. I know there's 74 OSOs out on recruiting duty right now, and then there's an XO and an OPSO in each recruiting station. There's 48 recruiting stations, so you had about 175 captains on recruiting duty.
Okay.
Then you had 75 to 80 captains teaching lieutenants at TBS. So it was kind of, I had learned to surf, so I knew there were waves in San Diego. Yeah. So when they said, hey, here's right. kind of it, you're looking at going to be a series commander.
Yeah.
Where you want to go? And San Diego, is on the West Coast. I said, well, sure, San Diego sounds good.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a plug and play, right? That's what lieutenants did. And it was a great tour. I really learned about really working with staff NCOs. Right? I mean, it was leadership, but it was learning to trust them, accountability, being involved and engaged, setting a positive command climate, and working, seeing what goes into making a basic Marine.
Yeah, I'm interested in the culture at MCRD as you remember it as a lieutenant or a captain, because I have no time at MCRD, right?
Yeah.
None. I've gone to a graduation.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. But it seems to me that as an officer, you're not a hat.
No.
Right. So what are some of the leadership challenges in that sort of an environment where you're like, I got to imagine that they've been through drill instructor school and you haven't, right? So there's got to be this aura of, hey, I kind of know something you don't, sir. Right. And there's got to be some sort of tension there. Like, did you have any challenges in that environment?
I think so. It's funny how much you learn on that tour. So we didn't go through drill instructor school. We went through series officer course, and we learned about McClure, and we learned about the abuses that had taken place in the 70s. And we learned as officers, we were there to really protect the integrity of the system, protect the drill instructors from themselves, to make sure those recruits treated fairly, but with dignity and respect, and that SOP for recruit training was followed. Which meant they all got a fair shake, right? They all got a fair shake to be successful. In those environments where there's power dynamics, the DIs have a lot of power.
Yeah,
And
that's
as
what
the
I kind of meant
officers,
by
you
that.
have to be engaged and teach core values, right? And really make sure that the Marines are following the SOP and a positive command climate, and that they're teaching those Marines, or those young recruits, how to be Marines. It was a fishbowl, right? So there's 75 captains all in an MCRD, so it's pretty competitive.
Right.
I remember there were like 12.
What was competitive about it? For the billets, like to be a series commander, is that competitive? Or do you mean when it was competitive, like the way it was competitive with us as lieutenants, but now you're just all captains?
Well, I think it was competitive with us the way as lieutenants, as we're all captains, but there were a lot of series commanders. What I remember, there were 3 battalions, 4 training companies, and there were 12 training companies. And obviously the great job was to be selected to be a company commander.
Okay.
And so I really focused on, making sure the Marines taught the recruits the right way and that they followed the SOP, and I protected them from themselves. So I was on them, making sure. I kind of got the nickname Father Bill for being a recruit daddy, because I was like looking out for the recruits. And
Okay.
it's funny. I had a pretty big mistake. Drill is important there for drill instructors. And I remember I was graduating a series. So I was the lead series commander.
How many series commanders are there in a company?
There's
3?
2 series in a company.
Okay.
There's each company has 2 series with either 3 or 4 platoons per series and an assistant series commander. Sometimes an assistant series commander will bounce between the 2 series, depending on how healthy we are, company grade officers. So the lead series commander has the lead role in a parade. And, you're given the commands for the officer center and, the sword manual. And this is all a big deal because there's a regimental drill master and they're not shy about critiquing the officers.
Right.
So my lead series commander, I had practiced, but I remember graduation week, it was raining and not raining. So we didn't know if we were going to have a graduation parade or not. And back then, this is 94, 95, the platoons were in size from, 90-man platoons in the summer to, 40-man platoons in the winter and in the spring. So there were chalk marks with where to turn because the platoons were different sizes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So this is kind of funny. So it was raining, not raining. So are we going to have the parade or not? So it was raining. All right, it's raining. Then it clears up. We're having the parade. Bowers, you ready to go? Yeah, I've nailed my spots. I'm lead series commander. I'm ready to go. What I didn't do was, BAMSIS, right? Begin planning a range of recon, make recon.
Yep.
So I didn't go out and make sure that I knew where the chalk marks were from the rain that had been there. So we're out there doing the parade. And I go through and I nail my officer center and I'm like, all right, we're back. We're home free. All they got to do is do the pass and review and we're good. So we're marching to do, and I'm like walking. I'm like, all right, where's the chalk mark? Where do I turn? Darn it. I don't see it. I didn't go check it before. I didn't make sure it was out there. So I kind of turned where I thought was the right place. And I ended up turning too fast, I ended up being in front of the band. You're supposed to be band, lead series commander, lead series, color guard. I turned in front of the band. So I'm going through the pass and review, and I think it kind of threw the narrator, the leader of the band, and he sees the lead series commander. Lead series commander so he kind of announces me. And while I'm doing it, I think everyone's jaw is just dropping in the reviewing stand, right? How did the lead series commander end up in front of the band? How did he screw this up that bad? My company commander is like, what are you, while I'm still in the parade at the pass and review, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm just kind of being straight faced. Yeah, I kind of gooned this one up. So I went down and finished the parade, and boy, I thought that was it. My fellow series commander says, well, hope you're ready to be the depot facilities officer. And it was kind of like, dang. And then the battalion sergeant major, this would be called hazing now, but it was just the way things were at the depot back then. There was a pink boot called the No Drill Award.
Oh, that's funny.
And it was just, it was a little, wooden plate with a spray painted pink boot or painted. And the series commander, whatever captain screwed up a parade or no drill, had to carry the pink boot until another captain
won it.
It. So Sergeant Major Truscott walked over that afternoon to, well, congratulations, sir, but here. And they plopped the pink boot award on my desk, said, you got to carry this now until another.
Oh, gosh, that's funny.
So, doggone. Well, anyway, I just went out and said, all right, well, that's it. I guess I went and surfed, didn't worry too much about it. Said, we'll see what happens. If I get canned, then, I'll have to go do something else. Well, this seemed like the end of the world at the time. And I thought, all right, this is it, right?
And here it is today, a funny story. You're a 2-star general.
Well, it's funny, too, because now that I'm a reviewing officer, I get to be reviewing officers for parades. And I'll go out there, and I was just out at San Diego, and I reviewed a parade. I said, oh, God, they look great. And I see the regimental drill master. Hey, Gunny, they looked great. Ah, sir, we got to work on the officer sword manual a little bit. I said, Gunny, if you only knew.
That's a great story.
Right? I mean, if you only knew, these captains are looking great to me. Elsewhere in the regiment, there had been an abuse investigation. While having a no drill award is bad, you're not having recruits mistreated, right? So when officers
nobody's
were not
getting hurt.
no one's getting officers who were not as engaged as they probably should have been in another company. There was an investigation, and ended up battalion commander, regimental commander made some changes. So I went in about 30 days from thinking I'm going to be canned facilities officer to need you to be a company commander, go jump into this company and get them going the right direction.
Yeah. So forgive my ignorance on this, but as MCRIC, do you own the MCRDs? Do you own, you've got everything, right?
So the MCRDs really wear 3 hats, right? The depot commanding generals wear 3 hats. So they are region recruiting commanders.
And there's 2 of them.
There's the Eastern region and the Western region.
Where are they right now?
They are General Will Williamson
at
Parris Island, General Jim Ryans at San Diego.
Okay.
So that's their recruiting hat. And they have 3 district commanders that report to them.
Colonels. Right, got it.
They have an MCRD hat where they're basically base commanders, right? They're installation commanders of MCRD Parris Island and MCRD San Diego.
Okay.
And they are recruit training commanders that they have a recruit training regiment, a weapons field training battalion, and a support battalion, a headquarters battalion that actually does all the support. So they wear 3 hats, those 2 1-stars.
Wow.
Hugely important jobs. The 2 generals we have there are doing an amazing job, but they got a lot of, institutional risk.
Yeah.
That
they have
they're
3
carrying.
staffs then, basically? I mean, kind of?
Well, they integrate them, right? Both generals have really done a brilliant job of integrating and making it one team towards making Marines. But yes, on the recruit training side, they report to Lieutenant General Watson, who's Training and Education Command.
Right.
On the recruiting side, they report to me. They also have relationship with the Marine Corps Installations Commander for all the thing they do with the depot.
Okay.
Very important jobs. They're busy all the time because they host graduations and they're involved in their community. A great job, though.
Yeah. If there's an incident in the regiment, a recruit, that's getting handled by General Watson.
Yes.
Okay. So, but you have some visibility into that. You must.
We have visibility. Right, and we talk all the time, and we have it works. It works. I believe it's the model of the other services. For the other services, they're envious of how we just have such a streamlined process for making Marines.
Right.
And we can talk about how this process was put in place by 2 of our greatest commandants, Generals Wilson and General Barrow, the 26th and 27th Commandant.
So I asked the question more for context because I want to make sure if I ask this question, you could answer it. But you talked about your time as a series commander and making sure that the drill instructors don't become their own worst enemy and get in trouble, and looking out for the health and welfare of people who are in process of and or have earned the title of Marine. Right. So I get it, but it just seems like going all the way back to Ribbon Creek, there's this constant annual learning of, okay, let's make sure we write a policy and a procedure for that. Let's make sure we do this. And the rule book's probably 15 times thicker than it was even 10 years ago. But I'm assuming people are still getting in trouble every now and then. What are some of the things? Everybody listening is going to know what the obvious ones are, right? Like, don't punch a recruit in the face. Okay. What are some of the ones that are less obvious that will really trip up? It's a two-part question. What are the things that will trip up a hat that aren't so obvious to everybody? But also, what are the things that will trip up an officer?
Great question. So when I was at the university, I taught about this. Before going to district command, I studied eradication of yellow fever, construction of the Panama Canal. And let me explain what I'm talking about, right? Malaria had wiped out the French's effort to do it. The Americans went in there. We thought we're going to show them how to do it. And then we started falling prey to malaria too.
Okay.
President Theodore Roosevelt doubled down and said, everybody support the medical officer. The chief medical officer, Colonel Gorgas, is the one who's calling the shots. We got to beat the disease before we can build the canal. And what Gorgas did was he developed a basic program. They figured out that malaria was caused by the Stegomoia mosquito. The Stegomoia mosquito was breeding eggs in the standing water, and the standing water was everywhere, right? So if you get rid of the standing water, you get rid of the Stegomoia mosquito. You get rid of Stegomoia mosquito, you get rid of malaria. So kind of the question is, where's your standing water, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And this is like culturally, things that can trip up drill instructor, things that an officer needs to watch out for. Look at the culture of the organization. How do the Marines talk to one another? How do they talk about one another? Is the culture a friendly, welcoming, inviting place? There's camaraderie between and amongst units. General Mattis would call it genuine affection. Do you see a genuine affection from the command to their Marines and from the Marines with each other? You can see it right now in recruiting. As MCRC commanding general, I can see it so clearly when I go out to these recruiting stations. And the best commanders don't try to make their Marines like them.
This is an RS commander.
Yeah, RS commander. Mm-hmm. The best commanders genuinely like, I could use the word love, genuinely like their people, right? And when you see that culture, there is a sense of affection, sincere, genuine affection between and among Marines. They want to help each other out. They don't use harsh, profane language in describing things, right? There's not an edge to the way they deal with one another. There's a welcoming, positive command climate, a positive environment that starts at the top. And I think for drill instructors, when you're in the mode of, they're high octane, we wind those Marines up all the way and then turn them loose.
Plus, they have their experience of how they were treated.
Yeah, how they were treated. That is a recipe. If you don't have an officer with strong core values, who's watching it and modulating it and making sure they're folks keeping the main thing, teaching these recruits how to be basically trained Marines, doing it with core values. Our warriors ethos, how we treat and take care of one another, strong core values, things can go off kilter. The series commander there is not there to be the best disciplinarian. As I just shared earlier, you're certainly not there for your drill
or your
expertise.
sword manual.
Your sword manual. I screwed up the biggest thing you can screw up. A parade in front of 3,000 people and wasn't fired.
Right, but 2,999 people didn't notice anything, probably. But
well, it's funny though. Even at my farewell, they I remember the RTRXO couldn't resist taking a dig at me and saying, "No, you were even the leader of the band for a parade." And I said, "Well, the band never sounded better that day than when I led them through the passing
great comeback,
review."
Yeah.
But you're there to set a positive environment and a positive command climate.
Yeah.
and make sure that you're genuinely liking them. And when there's that sincere sense of affection from the command to their Marines, the Marines will show it each other. I talk to each cornerstone class. These are all the lieutenant colonel and colonel, your commanders, and their sergeants major. There's always a question and answer. And let's see, what advice? I said, just be kind, genuinely like your people.
Yeah.
When you find yourself getting frustrated with your people, or you having maybe not believing the best, that's when it's time to check. You're on course.
I've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now, and there is a common theme in almost everybody I talk to, which is like empathy towards other human beings.
Yes.
But you know what's interesting? Like, I don't think empathy really gets taught at TBS to officers. It's not one of our JJ did tie buckles, right?
No.
Buckle, no S at the end. Sorry.
At the cornerstone, what I heard before going into lieutenant colonel command is, you got to make sure you hold the Marines accountable. Hold your people accountable. Set high standards, hold them accountable. Yes, got it.
Right.
Believe me, you don't survive 3 tours on recruiting duty if you don't understand accountability. But the most important Marine to hold accountable is yourself. Make sure you're doing everything that you should be doing to set conditions for your people. Position your people to win. Enable them and their families to be successful. Happy and successful. I say happy and successful because on recruiting duty, if you're not happy, you're going to have a hard time being successful. It's hard to inspire someone else, come be like you, if you don't exude a genuine happiness and pride in who you are and what you're doing.
And there's an energy there too. I don't think, again, no experience here, so I'm guessing, but I don't think you can fake it till you make it in the recruiting world.
No.
Just a reminder to maybe pause real quick and head over to Apple or Spotify and rate and review this podcast. Really helps when I get those. And if you're interested in supporting the project, check out the show notes for my link to the Supercast site and check out the different subscription levels there. Thanks.
I'm going to come back to recruiting, but I have one other question because you had a battalion level command with MWSS and you deployed with them. Can you talk a little bit about some lessons learned there from a leadership perspective as it relates to 2 things? One, what was your relationship with your sergeant major like, and what were some of the things that made that work or not work? And what was your relationship with the equivalent of your company commanders? And what sort of relationship did you have with them from a mentoring perspective?
First, with the sergeant major, I've had terrific sergeants major from the time I had them at RS Lansing to Marine Wing Support Squadron 273 to 6th District.
Oh yeah, you've had a bunch. Yeah, that's true. Right.
And the sergeant major, it is a true command team. Sergeant major, we go everywhere together. We always, he's or she is a part of every decision that we make. It is a true command team, and there's nothing off limits, right? I mean, anything that needs to be discussed, we're very transparent and we're very open, good communication with each other. I had it with Recruiting Station Lansing with Sergeant Major Cassiati, Marine Wing Support Squadron 273, Sergeant Major Tolar, 6th District, Sergeant Major Tony Page was terrific. Marine Corps University, Sergeant Major Cutsail, Marine Corps Installation Pacific, Sergeant Major Kitashima.
Oh yeah,
is terrific. She's still
trying
out
to get
there as
her
the
on
MEF
here
sergeant.
too.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I had her for almost 2.5 years out there together, and she's terrific.
Her name's come up no less than 15 times to get on this. I
Yeah.
think she's in Okinawa right now.
She's the MEF sergeant major
right
out there.
Yeah. So it's just the time. I just haven't. Anyway, but maybe you can have some point.
Yeah, I'll hopefully see her here a couple of months when
Great.
we go out there. And then Sergeant Major Moreno, who actually worked for me as a sergeant at Recruiting Station Lansing, had him as my first MCRIC Sergeant Major, and now Sergeant Major Goodyear. Having a good relationship with that Sergeant Major is key.
And you have a sergeant major now, right?
Right, Sergeant Major Goodyear. Yeah,
Goodyear,
terrific.
okay.
Yeah, Sergeant Major Goodyear, and before him it was Sergeant Major Moreno. So I've had great relationships with the sergeants major. They really do a good job, all the sergeants major, of understanding my intent to take care of Marines. And boy, when you empower a sergeant major, they can really make a lot of good things happen for you.
Yeah.
Right? Once they know, I mean, sergeants major excel at taking care of Marines when they're empowered to do so. And all enlisted matters, and even officer matters, you asked about my relationship with the company commanders.
Huh.
at the Marine Wing Support Squadron 273, terrific company commanders, still in touch with them. One of them's a colonel now, one's a lieutenant colonel, one retired as a lieutenant colonel, but yeah, I'm still in touch with them. They were terrific, and it's great to see them continue to excel. And, you know, the recruiting station commanders at 6th District, still in touch with a lot of them. A lot of them are in Marine Corps Recruiting Command now, actually. Yeah. The 2 assistant chiefs of staff for recruiting for the Eastern region and the Western region were RS commanders in 6th District. The MCRIC G3 was the RS commander in 6th District, and the incoming commander of the 8th District was a commander in 6th District. So,
were you a colonel at the same time Rob Clark was there with 4th?
Yes. So we had a little bit of overlap. So he went to 4th after I left the 6th. He was the ACS recruiting for Eastern Recruiting Region during my last year.
Okay.
He's great. Yeah. So, you know, and I say with the relationship with the sergeant major and those commanders, when the commanders know that CO and the sergeant major are an unbreakable command team, that really empowers the sergeant major to go take care of things that commander may need taken care of, right? Or to bring things to because there's trust, right? When subordinate commanders know that the sergeant major and I talk about everything, that nothing's off the table, the sergeant major is empowered to go tell the commander to give him advice, him or her advice. And all the sergeants major I've had have done that.
Gone directly to like
have gone directly to like a captain, or in some cases at Marine Corps installation specific, even the colonels commanding those installations. You know, Sergeant Major Kitashima, we would normally travel everywhere together, but we don't have to. Sometimes the sergeant major would come to me and said, "Sir, I want to go up and I want to go to, I want to go to Camp Fuji. I want to go to Iwakuni. I have some things I want to take care of up there." I said, "Okay, Sergeant Major, anything we need to talk about? Sir, I'll brief you when I get back." And she would go up there and take care of business. But the station commanders, the installation commanders, knew that sergeant major knew my intent, right? Knew my intent implicitly and was able to say, "Hey, you know, I think you may want to go this direction because I think the boss, if he sees what you're doing here, may want you to go a different direction." Empower that sergeant major.
Yeah. I've learned that lesson here in my civilian job too. And you met some of my employees when you came in, but I use that word intent all the time. I'm like, listen, it's such a powerful word. It's such a great guiding principle for anybody in any leadership position, whether you're a lieutenant, a 2-star general, or a civilian just running a division or even a company.
You know, what I'd also say too is really from the lieutenant colonel level, command at the lieutenant colonel level up, you're going to have that senior enlisted advisor who's a sergeant major. You're also very likely to have a master gunnery sergeant who's advising you on the technical side.
Right.
So it's almost a triad. So at Marine Wing Support Squadron 273, we had Sergeant Major Tolar, but we also had Master Sergeant Tinsley, who was the ops chief, right? And that ops chief is a force too, right? They really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. At 6th District, had Sergeant Major Page, but you also have the district contact team chief, who was Master Gunnery Sergeant Gaston.
That's a career recruiter?
And that was a career recruiter who was in charge of the training team, but they really mentored all the recruiter instructors out there.
Yeah.
So his finger was on the pulse of what was going on the technical side of recruiting. And as a commander, they have equal access to me, right? And you know, you don't want a stovepipe. Having those two talk to each other and really work together is very important too. So right now at Marine Corps Recruiting Command, we have Sergeant Major Goodyear, right? He's the Marine Corps Recruiting Command Sergeant Major. We also have Master Gunnery Sergeant Baker, who's G3 Chief. And he is connected to the regions, the district training team chiefs. And when we huddle together, it's really is a triad, right? We all kind of talk amongst each other and we know what's going on and we speak with one voice.
Yeah.
And and they know my intent. And when they know my intent, they're empowered to go out there and execute it.
Yeah. It's interesting because a few minutes ago you said, as someone who's survived 3 recruiting tours so far, right?
So far, right? We got to
right.
make, we got some contracts to write in December.
Exactly. Well,
That's
hey,
right.
Little Phil will keep you out of trouble. So anyway, but I'm curious, with all of that experience across the board, and to include MCRD, right? Because you can cut, right. But what are some of the characteristics? There are Marines out there who have been histed and they're heading to recruiting. And I'm just going to take a silly wild ass guess here and say like 75% are probably like hanging their head like, oh God, you know. It just
Some.
You probably were, and when I thought I was going to end up in recruiting before I went to Anglican, like I was kind of worried about it too. So what are some of the things that an incoming recruiter, both an officer and enlisted, need to know about coming into that billet that are all the good things about it that maybe they're not hearing because they probably only hear like the bad stuff?
You know, they are, what I would say for them coming into the billet, be ready to make the most important contributions they will to the Marine Corps that they're probably going to do over the course of their career. Congressional Medal of Honor for bravery in battle. When we go visit recruiting substations and recruiting stations around the country, what I'd like to do is I'll talk to the staff non-commissioned officer, the substation commander, have them orient me on the system in their area. But then I'd like to get the canvassing recruiters around and just tell me their best recruiting stories, right? Of just how the coolest stories of how they are changing lives for the better. And you hear some of the coolest stories, and to see these Marines light up with how they are changing lives for the better. And they sometimes see potential where no one else does. They'll sometimes see some spoiled kid who thinks he has everything, but they're missing a sense of purpose, and then they help them find it in the Marine Corps. They'll work with them to get them ready for officer candidate school, and help them lose 30 pounds or transform themselves and then go become a leader. Their eyes light up.
Yeah.
And they are changing lives for the better. And if you think about it, what could possibly be more important than investing in the youth of the country? The youth who are the future of the country, right? And these Marines do that. And, it is exciting. It is inspiring. Our Marine recruiters out there are in the inspiration business.
Yeah.
Right. And, some have said, well, recruiting is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Marines don't look for needles in haystacks. We don't have enough. If you want to get a needle out of the haystack, we use a very powerful magnet. And that powerful magnet is the well-trained, well-led, confident, physically fit Marine who we send through basic recruiter course or officer course, selection officer course, and we put them out there on the streets and in the schools and the campuses of America. And to watch it happen, they exude a magnetic force that just attracts and inspires other young men and women to want to be like them.
Yeah.
And when you see it in action, it's just so rewarding to see. And, you just hear amazing stories about how these Marines are changing lives for the better. So if you're a Marine out there, officer, sergeant, staff sergeant, and you got orders to recruiting duty, first, congratulations, because you're in the elite of the Corps, right? Commandant just emphasized it last week to all our officer selection officers. He says it in his planning guidance. We send the very best Marines out there to inspire the future of the Corps, right? Recruiting and recruit training, right? Those Marines are carefully screened and selected. So if you're involved in the entry-level pipeline, you've been screened and selected by a process put in place by the Commandant, and you're there for a reason. And you are going to change lives for the better and shape the future of the Marine Corps.
Here's another way to look at it. Okay, I'm going backwards here a little bit, but the future sergeant major of the Marine Corps is a PFC or Lance Corporal right now, which means one of your recruiters signed that Marine into the Marine Corps.
Yes.
That's how powerful what they are doing is. Now, there's a chance that an OSO is signed the next commandant because you got the naval captain and all that.
Right.
So it doesn't quite work the same way, but there is no path to becoming the future Sergeant Major Ruiz that doesn't come through one of your men or women out there canvassing.
That's right. It is very rewarding to see young men and women who you had a hand in coming into the Marine Corps, right? Now, as long as I've been in, the folks from Recruiting Station Lansing, although there's still there may be a few around who came in when I was the recruiting station commander, but really as a district commander, seeing officer candidates, right?
Yeah.
Officer candidates who I remember when they were civilians, I remember them coming into the Corps. They're majors now. They're majors and they're doing well. And I still stay in touch with some of them. And they still stay in touch with me. It's terrific to see them excel in the Corps.
The thing that, recruiters know this because they signed up, right?
Yeah.
So they all went through a recruiter. So they have their own individual experience. If anybody's listening to this podcast that's considering coming in the Marine Corps or already in, what do you call them, poolies or whatever the term is, not everybody that joins the Marine Corps stays in for 30 years.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Some people do 4 years and they get out, like I did. When I decided to become a Marine officer and join ROTC, for as cheesy as that sounds, right? Yeah. My intention was to be sitting where you are right now at a 30-year mark. Yeah. That's just what 19-year-old Dave Armstrong thought he was going to do. Like, I was working so hard to become a Marine officer. Like, of course I'm going to do it for 30 years. Look at how hard it is to earn the title, right?
Yeah.
And then 7 years later, I was getting out. So everybody has their own journey with the Marine Corps. But the one constant thing that's so valuable is that the formative time of the Marine Corps is that 4 years. And anybody who joins the Marine Corps and earns the title is going to carry that title for the rest of their lives.
That's
and
right.
Just yesterday, I had a guy come in here from the security team in the building. Turns out he's a Marine. He was a sergeant in Dave Furness's battalion when he had 1-1. And like, he and I sit down, we talk for 45 minutes about Marine Corps and who do you know and what'd you do and stuff like that. And now I have a new friend.
Isn't that wonderful? Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many stories that, Conrad and I see that, right? When we're traveling around, you'll see someone but they see us in the uniform. Hey, former Marine. Hey, sir, my college roommate, Dave West. He's the president of Cisco Asia. He did his time in the Marine Corps, got out. Now he's very successful as a civilian. Everyone has their own time horizon in the Marine Corps, but they always identify themselves as a Marine for the rest of their life.
Right. And that is really that is your magnet, right?
Yeah, Vice President-elect Vance.
Yes.
Right. Former Marine.
Right. Who knows? I could be the Secretary of Navy someday.
Yeah.
I mean, I still got a lot of runway ahead of me.
That's right. And also, if you got orders out to recruiting duty, you were going to start the transformation process.
That's right.
Those captains, the commandant just told our OSOs this last week. He said, recruiting and retention are his priorities. And he told the OSOs this, and he says, look, as good as we are on the enlisted side, we're going to get 38,100 enlisted Marines this year. If we don't get those 1,800 officers right, those young Marines aren't going to have a great first enlistment, and, they're not going to want to stay in. And the OSOs are making sure we're getting the right young men and women of character to come in and lead Marines. And when you get the lieutenants right and the captains right, you get the retention success that we're having right now. I think we're having like 115% retention success.
Yeah.
It's terrific. That's because those lieutenants are doing their jobs, right? They're inspiring and caring for these young Marines.
Yeah. The other thing about the retention piece too is the Marine Corps can never lose sight of the fact that what we do is fun.
It's fun.
Like,
it's fun.
Not all the time, and I get it. And everybody hopes when they join the Marine Corps, they're going to do a lot more fun stuff than they're going to do the crappy stuff. That's always going to exist. Yeah. But leaders out there you need to remember that you got to let the Marines do the stuff that they joined to do. My stories that I tell now are about blowing stuff up, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't tell stories about writing fitness reports and, whatever training I had to do or whatever. Like, I talk about the fun stuff, being out in the field, blowing my nose in my sleeve, being a Gungy Marine and having fun out there. And that's a huge component of leadership, is making sure that the Marines are actually having some fun and doing what they joined to do.
Yes. I try to set the example for that, because I certainly try to have fun. It's funny. Sergeant Major Kitashima and I was out at Marine Corps Installation Pacific. We had a company grade breakfast. And, Sergeant Major Kitashima and I were ready to talk about, hey, COVID restrictions were easing in Okinawa. We closed the barracks in Futema, so we were going to move some staff NCOs. And so we were basically going to allow our lieutenants and captains, those who could, to start moving out in town. And, we were there to encourage them. Hey, if you want to move out in town, move out in town. I said, hey, take dive lessons, buy a surfboard. I'd love to see more of you out there at Tsunabe or Tangam Pier. And it was interesting because some of the company grade wanted to ask questions about talent management or about force design. I said, hey, this is great, but let's talk about having fun. Right. We're out here in Westpac. Make sure we're having fun. And they were,
All right, so here's a question for you. What do you do to have fun in the Marine Corps? Not like surfing your like outside your time off. If you were to look over the past, I'm just going to like your past 6 months, what have you done? And I'm using my air quotes for listeners. What have you done Marine Corps fun? Like you gone out and thrown any grenades or like gone to some ranges with the Marine? Like, do you show up places unannounced and just see what they're doing? Like, what's your fun?
So we've shown up unannounced. What is actually fun, so I think what is fun is when we're traveling, sometimes we deviate, we'll modify the plan, deviate the plan. And, and like, I don't know, this to me is fun. Like the recruiting, I'll be with the recruiting station commander and I'll be like, hey, is there an area where we haven't like been successful, or can we do something like plan a hasty ambush or go and sometimes we'll do that and we'll like, let's go here. And I said, all right, so we'll go. Opening a new market is fun. Figuring out how to like crack into a school or a campus, that's fun. Setting conditions for, a successful engagement is fun. I mean, I'll give you a couple of examples. So, it's like when we were out at Fresno State, Cal State Fresno, this was last spring, talking to their dean.
You know who's an alumni of that school? Tom Savage.
Yeah, great school. It's a great school. Well, their dean was talking about, hey, we'd like to see more Marine Corps participation in some of our events here on campus. Can you provide a color guard for our graduation in May? I said, sure, we'll have a color guard here. Awesome. Anything else? So he was feeling, he says, well, could you provide a band? Colonel Mike Ogden says, sir, I'll get the band. And then the dean says, well, this is a Latino school. We want Latino music. Can they play Latino music? I said, right, and the checks that our Marines cash, we have the best musicians in the world. Our Marines can play anything.
Yeah.
If the man can be here, you want him to play Latino music, they'll play Latino music. They went to the graduation in May, and it was just terrific, right? Colonel Logan squared it all away with the recruiting station commander, and you just see the president of the university, the dean, all the students just having a wonderful time at graduation in May with the Marine band there playing. And this was at a time when some colleges were canceling graduations because of protests, if you remember. Yet Marines were a part of this amazing event out at Fresno State. And, when you just it's fun to go set conditions for something like this, to just work with Marines, to create opportunities for Marines to be successful, right? For Marines to go out and bring joy to other parts of the community. And inevitably, when Marines are out there having fun, doing what Marines do in the community, that's that magnetic force we're talking about, right? That's like other people see that. They see the camaraderie that we share with each other. And there's a sense of purpose that's, missing in a lot of they want a piece of that.
Yeah.
They want that. So that's fun. And we've got to do some fun things as part of the job, throw at the first pitch at a Twins game is fun. Interacting with Marines out in the community is fun. Going to campuses and getting to talk to young people, that's fun. We were at Clemson the week before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanksgiving. I know you're a USC guy.
I'm a South Carolina guy. Yeah, but we just beat him in basketball last night. So.
You did.
Yeah, we did.
We were out there with the women's rowing team on a Saturday morning.
Oh, that's cool.
At 8:00. It was a cold Saturday morning. The women's rowing team are the only team on campus that's practicing. Right. Those are some tough, fit. Right, and. We're out there with the district commander and the officer selection officer, and He also sets 4 appointments on the spot, right? With just young women of character who want to be a part of something special.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
very cool.
So that's fun. That
Yeah.
is fun seeing Marines in action doing what Marines do.
Okay. Because in my civilian world, I'm a sales organization, right? I sell the advice of the team here that works at this company. And so for the past 25 years, I've lived my life with being told no all the time. And man, it hurts, right?
Yeah.
Like some hurt more than others,
Yeah.
but it's probably very analogous to what some of your recruiters are experiencing right now, right?
Yeah.
They get told no, they can get down on themselves. What do you have to say to the recruiters who are out there right now? Because I'm sure there's a couple that are probably struggling, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like, but
Yeah.
it's a wave.
Yeah.
Just it's timing and all that stuff. And I remember when I was down in Jacksonville, RS Jacksonville for their ball last year, and I made
Yeah.
the comment like, hey, the one thing that a recruiter has the power to do is pick up the phone again.
Yeah.
Because you never know what that next phone call
Yeah.
is going to yield. What are some of the things, and I'm sure you say this to your RS COs, but say it to the audience. Like, what is it that you tell an RS CO or a substation commander or something like that? You're like, hey, listen, what's your pep talk to them when they're blue?
Well, I mean, first is just
because you probably don't pep talk that many people on a daily basis.
No,
right?
but I was a RS commander, and I know Marines can get down, and I know the sensory. And here's what I just tell any Marine out there who's struggling, any OSO, if you're struggling and you're at your wit's end, you don't know what to do next, right? You just put on Marine Corps t-shirt and PT gear and just go do what Marines do where people can see you doing it.
Yeah, great. That's a great
that is the, if you just go do what Marines, you are a Marine. You've earned the title. That title will stay with you for the rest of your life. You've earned it. Others, and the best Marines, like recruiters, have kind of convinced themselves that, like, if someone rejects you or says no, then they tell themselves, well, you weren't good enough anyway. Which is true, right? I mean, it's just, hey, we don't wish you ill.
It's a defense mechanism.
But, it's like, all right, hey, you know what? You may not have had what it takes. That's fine. Hey, good luck. You're going to be successful in whatever you do. Just know that this is a special team over here, right? When you're ready, if you want to come back, maybe things don't work out over here, you come back and talk to us. But what I tell a Marine who's struggling is keep the faith. If you're at your wit's end, go put on a Marine Corps t-shirt, go work out at a gym, work out at a high school, community college, wherever. Go do what Marines do. And it is inevitable that someone will see you being a good Marine. And you just being yourself, exuding those core values of honor, courage, commitment, that warrior's ethos, looking sharp in your uniform, being tough, smart, fit, elite warrior, that is the magnetic force.
Yeah.
That is it. And if you just go do that, eventually things are going to turn for you. Let me give you a quick, this is part of, like, when we travel, we get to hear these great stories.
Yeah.
So we were in Minnesota we're in Minnesota. I'll just leave it in Minnesota. And I was talking to a Marine about, all right, tell me about what your best, he says, well, sir, he was on a 0. Nothing had been going well for him. He had kids go down and get on deck and then disqualified. Another kid failed the ASVAB. He's feeling down. Nothing is going his way. He thinks he's going to write a 0 for the month. His wife calls him, and his wife is sick, and she's got a kid home. And can you please? So the substation commander tells the Marine who's on a 0, hey, look, go home, take care of your wife, come back. Tomorrow's a new day. So the Marine left feeling dejected, like, wow, so he goes home. His wife says, can you order me crumble cookie? He says, I just got home. I don't want to go back out. It's Minnesota. It's cold. He says, all right, well, just get it DoorDashed. So they DoorDash a crumble cookie. And it's like that cold, sleet rain. Kid delivers a crumble cookie on DoorDash on his bicycle. So the kid comes. So the Marine answers the door, and then the guy gives him the cookie. And the Marine says, hey, it's awful cold to be riding your bike. Kid says, yeah, I'm in between jobs right now. My car's broken down, so I don't have a car. So I'm just kind of doing this until I get my feet back underneath me. Like, well, you look like you're pretty physically fit. I mean, what? And the kid said, yeah, just things weren't going my way. Graduated high school 2 years ago. And the Marine's like, well,
yeah.
here he is on a 0, and he goes home, and mission comes to his door. And you know where this is going.
Yeah.
The Marine says, well, hey, did you ever think about joining the Marine Corps? And the kid says, well, actually, I wrestled in high school, and I thought about it back then, but, things haven't been going well. This job didn't work out. Now I'm doing this, and I don't know. But the Marine's like, well, would you be willing to come in and hear about your opportunities in the Marine Corps and how we can get you on the right path? The kid says, yeah, that sounds great. Kid's a Marine now, right? So I guess if you're a Marine,
maybe future sergeant major of the Marine Corps.
Maybe future sergeant major of the Marine Corps.
You never know.
You don't know,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're a Marine and you're struggling, keep the faith, do what Marines do, treat other people with dignity and respect, stay physically fit, go do what Marines do, look good in your uniform, be fit, be squared away, be positive. I guarantee you, I promise you, someone is going to notice that.
Yeah.
Someone will be drawn into your magnetic force, and they will want to earn the title Marine. And then when they do, you're going to feel enormous pride. And then they may even bring their buddies, right? And this is where you get the pool program. This is how Marines this is the black magic of the Marine Corps, the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Systematic recruiting.
I'll share a quick story with you because you just made a flashback come to mind. When I decided to join ROTC, it was because I saw Top Gun and I wanted to be a Navy fighter pilot. And it's probably the same way it is now, but you could join NROTC as a college program, basically volunteer to be in the NROTC battalion with hopes of picking up a scholarship. But back then, it was really easy to pick up a Navy scholarship because this was like back when they were trying to make the 600 ship Navy and like all that stuff. And then you could just pick up the Navy scholarship and turn around and say, I want to convert it to a Marine option scholarship, and boom, you're a Marine option.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. But
okay. That's how can't do it anymore because they probably ended it with me. We're like, this is how we ended up with Armstrong. Shut that off. Right. So, but I was driving through campus. My parents were driving me to school. I hadn't even gotten to my dorm yet.
Yeah.
And we're driving through campus. And this is back for listeners. Our PT gear, in my mind, used to be way cooler than it is right now, right? We had the red silky shorts and the yellow, right?
Yeah.
But if you had graduated from OCS, you were a green shirter and you wore the green USMC on the front, officer can't school on the back, and you only wore that if you were a graduate of OCS or staff or something like that, right? So we're driving through campus and I see 6 Marines running in the green t-shirt and the red shorts. I don't even know what that means yet. I just saw them and I can name all 6 of them right now, right? But I didn't know who they were. I didn't know anything about them. All I saw was USMC and the red shorts. And I remember my mom and dad, my mom's brother was a career Marine.
Yeah.
So she said, oh, look, there are the Marines. And she's like, have you thought about doing that? And I'm like, I hadn't really because I just hadn't. And that was it, man. I saw those 6 Marines and they were, because they were green shirters, right? They had just finished OCS and they're flying, right? They're running like 16-minute 3-mile pace. And that was it. Those 6 guys running in that. So you say, just be out there.
If you're just out, just out there being a good Marine, right? If you just do what Marines do, you are going to be a magnetic force.
Right.
And it's I had at me in a recruiting station, Lansing, I had Marines try to quit on me out there, right? Marines try to quit. And then you just have faith in them, said, hey, look, I get it. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Let's go do what Marines do. And there was one Marine, I remember we had driven up there in Petoskey, Michigan. We had driven like a half hour to go give this kid an enlistment screening test. It was a new recruiter. And the kid failed the test. So we're driving back. The Marine is complaining, oh, the kids out here, they all failed the test or this. I said, well, Staff Sergeant, maybe we ask better questions. We find out what they're doing, what classes they're taking in school before we drive, half hour, 45 minutes. And then the conversation just turned south, right? He had just been dealing with a lot of rejection. And basically, he tried to just say, you know what, I'm just done with this. I need to go back to 5th Marines and go with my boys to OIF. OIF was going on.
Yeah.
Staff Sergeant, sounds like you're trying to quit on me. Well, I guess I am, sir. I quit. No, we're not. So I said, go back to your office. So we went back to the office. We got our PT gear on. I said, we were going to go. We went up to the Petoskey Community College. I still remember this. And it was one of those slushy, rainy, December Michigan days. And I think we sprinted the straights and walked the curves out on the little track for like 2 miles to just get a workout in. And we had our Black Pain is Weakness, Leaving the Body t-shirts and then we went into the gym. We asked, hey, can we use we're not students here, but they saw our Marine and they let us use the community college gym, and kids were up talking to us. And we say, hey, you know what? We worked at all the piss and vinegar, right? We got back to the office. I said, Staff Sergeant, you still want to, sir, I don't want to quit anymore. I said, you ready to go? Let's go get a steak at the Outback Steakhouse. So we went and checked in. He brought me up to the hotel. We checked in. 3 days later, someone who had seen us at that Petoskey Community College gym, he called me up so excited. Sir, remember that young lady who let us use the gym? She's coming down, right? I mean,
oh, that's awesome.
So you just go be a good Marine.
Yeah.
You're going to be the magnetic force to inspire someone to join. We're in the inspiration business.
We really are.
This is the inspiration business. The decision to join the Marine Corps, right, with all our history and our legacy and our traditions, it is an inspiring decision. Someone chooses to become part of something bigger than themselves.
Right.
And, our Marine Corps Recruiting Command's culture is different too, and we haven't talked about the history of MCRC, but history of Marine recruiting when we transitioned to an all-volunteer force. I mentioned earlier the 26th and 27th Commandants, General Lou Wilson and General Bob Barrow, who put our system in place, right? Wilson was the 26th Commandant from 75 to 79. Barrow was his manpower chief, then his assistant commandant, and then became commandant. Systematic recruiting, career recruiters, the Marine Corps Recruit Depot structure, all of that was put in place under those two commandants. And those two commandants, General Wilson earned the Congressional Medal of Honor at Chenita Ridge. He was a captain.
Yeah.
Barrow had earned the Navy Cross at Finchillen Pass at the Chosin Reservoir, basically helped save the division. His company, Alpha 11, helped to save the division by holding the key hill above where the bridge got put across the 1,500-foot gorge on the division's breakout route. Those two commandants put in place the system that we still use today. So really, MCRC was born on the battlefield, right? It was born on the battlefield, and our system was put in place by, a commandant who earned the Congressional Medal of Honor on Chenita Ridge on Guam, and a commandant who earned the Navy Cross at the Chosin Reservoir.
That's amazing. I didn't know that history of it.
Yeah, I'd say, I said, if you really want to know why Marine Corps is making its numbers in this time of crisis, you need to know what happened on Chenita Ridge, Guam, 26 July 1944. You know what happened on Finchillen Pass, Chosin Reservoir on 9-10 December 1950, because the captains commanding companies there saw what when the fate of their parent divisions was hanging in the balance, what the captains saw their Marines do burned into their souls the imperative to have the highest quality Marines possible on those future battlefields. When the country transitioned to the all-volunteer force in 1973, we initially stumbled out of the blocks. Wilson became the 26th Commandant, made General Barrow his manpower chief, and really, over the course of those 8 years, they put in place the system that is still in place today.
Oh, what's the hardest part of your job right now? Like, what if you rewind the past 6 months? Like, what's the one thing where you slammed your fist on the table? You're like, God, like, what is a hard part? You're a 2-star general. What's hard about your job as a 2-star general? Like,
yeah. Well, the hardest part of the job is the process that our commandant has put in place to screen and select best Marines we have to go out there on the streets of America to attract and inspire our future Marines is incredibly effective. It is not 100%. And the hardest part of my job, honestly, is seeing where someone who we have really put great responsibility on their shoulders, they may not be the best fit.
Okay.
And the hardest part is really when you see a command struggling, that is challenging for me. That is hard.
That's what I would imagine your answer was
hard.
going to be. Yeah.
Because when a command struggles, I know it is not just that command that's struggling. There's Marines in that command who are struggling. There's families who are struggling. There's children who are impacted by the negativity of the challenging mission. It spreads, and it's not making people's lives better. One of my core objectives is enable Marines and their families to be happy and successful. My first objective is to reinforce and expand the trust of the American people. The hardest part of my job is when we see Marines not make good on objective one, right? And that's normally through a breakdown, a lapse in core values.
Okay.
Right? And those Marines are in an ethical minefield every day. I mean, understand that. Our Marine recruiters are going into high schools and on college campuses. They are in an ethical minefield every day because the world is what it is. And there's temptation everywhere, and there's the society that we're in, and there's our values. So they're in this ethical minefield where they have to project our warriors' ethos and our core values to attract and inspire the right young men and women to become Marines. So it hurts when we see that. This is a Marine we've played great trust and responsibility in, somehow falls short.
Yeah.
And it also hurts when you go to a command, you see we're falling short in enabling Marines and their families to be happy and successful. And I put happy first for a reason, because if your Marines are not generally proud of who they are, what they do, and why they're doing it, and their families feel that pride, they're going to have a hard time inspiring someone to become a Marine to be successful. I've not seen it work. And look, negative leadership recruiting has, there's examples galore of negative leadership in recruiting. I'm telling you, Dave, I have never seen it work. I have never seen it work. The negative, centralized, punitive, you come in and you smile and you dial until you get, I just haven't seen that work.
I haven't seen it work in my civilian world either.
But when you see commanders or command groups resort to this because they're missing, they don't know what else to do, and they resort to it, and you go and you see a command that is not firing on all cylinders, that is obviously not a happy and inspiring place to work. And you can see, Conrad knows, we can see it in about 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
When you walk into a place, you can tell. Marines are either coming out from behind their desks in their cubicles to greet you and smile and say hello, or they're like going out the back because they don't want to. You can tell. That is hard to see. And look, when we do see it, you got to make a change.
Yeah. I skipped over a part of your career when you started talking about the commandants that started MCRIC.
Yeah.
I skipped over a part of your career where you worked for two ACMACs.
Yeah.
Right? Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. Who were they? Because the numbers were on there and I didn't get a chance to look them up.
Yeah.
And were you the equivalent of Commandant? Were you their aide or were you like chief of staff?
A military assistant. So I worked.
Is that different than an aide?
Yeah. So I worked for the 33rd and the 34th Assistant Commandants of the Marine Corps, General Paxton and General Walters, two wonderful leaders and mentors, still mentors to me. I just learned so much from them and from serving with them. I was their military assistant, and we'd travel together, and we would talk, I would help them with their duties, but they were really more teaching me, and just seeing the way they served the commandant, the way they led, the way they knew headquarters of Marine Corps, the way they knew the Pentagon, they knew the bureaucracy, they could maneuver it, but just all the tough issues. And the ACMAC is running the staff and running the business of the Pentagon. No, terrific learning experience from both ACMACs working for them. I did it from 2015 to 2017.
Okay, so pretty decent amount of time.
2 years, 2
Yeah.
years. And yeah, it was a blessing. It
What
was
were
a
some of the
blessing.
hardest parts of that tour?
I don't know that it was really hard. What I really saw in both ACMACs was the work ethic that I have. It was my introduction to what a general officer's work ethic and what their schedule like.
Yeah.
They're on all the time and they push themselves.
Yeah.
And they're always on for the Marines. They always make time for the Marines. And, you know, I remember there was a time with one of them, we were traveling, the staff was whooped, right?
Yeah.
It was at the end of a travel. We were tired and the aide had come to me and they'd said, "Hey, sir, you know, looks like the schedule is going to be tight. I don't know that we can fit this in and see these Marines here and still get back and give the boss time to change to get ready for the speaking engagement that night. Recommend you go to the ACMAC and we cank this engagement. And that way, have some time." And I remember I went to the ACMAC and I said, "Sir, talk to the aide. Here's the time. Here's it." ACMAC said, "Okay, thanks, Bill, but we'll go see the Marines. We'll make it. Hey, thanks."
Yeah.
and they, they did it.
Yeah,
They
that's
did
awesome.
it, right? They did it. They were just wonderful Marines, right? Great mentors, leaders.
Yeah.
The chance to work up close for ACMAC was a great learning experience.
Well, it just dawned on me, I'm going off script here a little bit,
Yeah.
but we have your aide here,
Yeah.
right? And so in the context of the way
Yeah.
you just answered the question, like, what's he learned? What's the hardest part of his job?
I think for me,
And I'm not going to let you talk. I'm going to let's hear the boss talk about this, right? Because people are listening to this and they're coming in this summer to be an aide to somebody, right? So
Well, I think for me is just keeping me on schedule and keep me in
Yeah.
the right uniform. Because I like that. I have high energy, but I will go off script or I will go here or I will go talk to someone else. And I won't always be mindful of the time when I have another event. So I think the aide sometimes has to track me down in the building or go because I'm talking to someone else and I think
Right.
keeping me on track. And Sergeant Major has to work on that too. I mean, they both, I think the Sergeant Major and the aide work together to kind of keep me.
what's the best part of his job?
I would think the best part of his job would be you get to see infantry officer. He's going to go be a company commander after expeditionary warfare school. You get to see officers who are kind of one step removed from company command, battalion officer, right? He gets to see these recruiting station commanders brief me on their RS, show me their recruiting substations, talk about how they are leading a complex, distributed command through very challenging times. And they're not that much older than him, and they're not that far removed from where very shortly. And he gets to see the best in the business do it.
Yeah, that's the upside is just being the fly on the wall and seeing how high units operate, being around your network and in your orbit. Like that's got to be a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, he's seen in the past, 6 months, some of the best field grade commanders we have
Yeah.
in the Corps talk about their challenges, how they've taken charge of this large distributed command, in some cases, how they've turned around an organization that wasn't making it, in some cases, how they're applying leadership to this area that needs work to target this specific group. If they needed help on their officer mission, how they're cracking into this school to get what the Corps needs. And, they're really he's going to go to, the aide's going to go to expeditionary warfare school, then out to the fleet as a company commander. They're one fleet tour. He's seeing the best in the business,
Yeah.
the best in the Corps, the best field grade commanders we have in the Corps who aren't that much older than him, brief the commander of their organization and show them how they're doing it.
Yeah. The interesting part of me doing this podcast is when I interview the generals, I'm always meeting the aides and generally working with them pretty closely to get everything lined up. And I've met a whole bunch of aides now that I have in my orbit, and I get to see how they handle me as it relates to setting these kind of things up. And I reflect back on it and I think to myself, I interviewed to be an aide and didn't get picked up because I had already been slotted for a MEU, right? So I walked right in there. I was like, I'm slotted for a MEU. I don't even know what I'm doing here, kind of thing. And what do they call the deputy MEF commander, whoever the ones are like, so I was the first lieutenant. Yeah. And man, that was the last job I ever wanted to do. However, I will say, after watching like Conrad and some of his other peers, I would have done okay there and I probably would have liked it.
See, I was carrying the pink boot around. When it was my turn, I don't think no general was going to pick an aide who's the pink boot guy, right? So I don't know that I was even in the mix.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kidding, but no, I mean, the aide gets to see the best in the business.
Yeah.
Right. And I said earlier about like Bill Vista, General Kuhn's aide, right? How he had worked with General Christmas's aide at that story I told about the mess night when General Christmas, the aides worked for their generals to make that happen, right? They facilitated that and the aides helped create an unforgettable experience for any Marine who was present that night. I'm still moved by it, talking about it 30 plus years later.
Yeah.
But the aides made that happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? So aides can facilitate and enable really good things to happen for their generals and for Marines.
Yeah. I think it's one of those jobs that nobody wants to get. And then once they have it and they finish it up, they're like, that was good. I'm glad I did that. And it was a good experience.
Yeah.
And it's funny you're talking about the pink boot. That reminded me also.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about the hazing. Like I
know. I think that'd be hazing now.
But like I know back in our day, I think about when I went to Anglico, the sergeant major had somehow procured an ice cream truck and they spray painted it pink and it was our safety vehicle on the runs.
Yeah.
And if you dropped out of a run, you had to get in the ice cream truck. Like that was like the pink boot of death that you had or whatever it was called.
So, I remember, so I was a company commander. So I was Bravo company commander. I think the pink boot, now we're graduating successful cycle. We're on top of the Reaper. It was pre-Crucible, but we're taking a break. We're changing. So Sergeant Major Truscott comes up, and he was still the battalion sergeant major. We have a new battalion commander now. And Sergeant Major Truscott said, "Hey, sir, recruit's looking really good. You're having a good cycle." "Oh, thanks, Sergeant Major." "Hey, sir, you got that pink boot in your backpack there?" I said, "No, Sergeant Major, I don't." He said, "Sir, you're supposed to have that pink boot on you." I said, "Well, Sergeant Major, and I was thinking like, all right, we're having a good cycle. I'm a successful, at the time, successful company commander now. I'm going to be okay." Well, the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Whitty, comes up to me. He says, "Hey, Big Bill, hey, come here for a second." So he comes, he puts his arm around, he walks over. He says, "Hey, your series is, your company's really looking good. Your series commander looking good." I said, "Oh, thank you, sir." Because the battalion commander come and did the Reaper hike with us. And he says, "But hey, man, you need to have that pink boot on you."
Right. And now all of a sudden you're like pointing out all the lieutenants that are screwing up to get rid of that boot, right? You're like, "Hey, did you see what that guy did?"
I eventually did get rid of it.
Okay.
I eventually got rid of it.
Who got it? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. And I remember they knocked their cover off at the officer center because, the sin had to be egregious enough. It had to be worse than leading the band through the pass-in review. And it was all my fault, right? I mean, I should have gone out. And I guess someone had actually knocked their cover off at a parade, which can happen, right?
Sure,
I probably did that a couple of times in rehearsal too. And I got the pass.
I'll have to ask around off the record if there's something like that on the DL that happens at 8th and I with the officers. Like, is there something in center house that says like, okay, you have to drink out of the pink mug or something? Or
I mean, I don't know, do series commanders listen to this podcast too?
Everybody listens to this podcast.
Oh boy.
Except the commandant. So don't worry about that.
I'm going to be I think I'm going to be reviewing some parades here, right? I think I got invited to do another one. I probably have no street cred with any of these series commanders or company commanders now. But you know what? But hey, keep faith, right?
When was the last time you went to the top of the Reaper?
Oh boy, I haven't been to the top of the Reaper since I was probably company commander out at Camp Pendleton.
Think you can make it these days?
Oh, I think I can say, yeah. I mean, I still,
Yeah. Yeah, you're big. You're tall.
I still PT religious. Yeah, we have to be in Marine Corps recruiting command.
Yeah, you can't be messing around.
part of the brand is physical fitness. I mean, that is part of the Marine Corps brand is we are tough, smart, fit, elite warriors, right? And we are physically fit. And, he knows every time I go into a recruiting substation, Charlie's Deltas, we'll get on the bar and crank out some pull-ups.
Yeah, nice.
I know if they're making it because the staff in CYC will say, that one doesn't count. That one doesn't count. It's all right. They're making mission here. If they're, But the key is we project an aura of physically fit Marines. If you're going to be a part of this tribe here, you're going to be part of this organization, you're going to be fit.
Yeah.
You're going to lead by example. No matter who you are, no one's above it, right? Everybody fills sandbags.
Yeah.
Everybody, we have standards. Commandant talks about that. Commandant just did his combat fitness test and he's out there.
I know, it was awesome. I saw it on social
right?
media. Yeah.
So we have a responsibility to set the example. So, yeah.
Talking about social media too, I'm a heavy user of social media just because of the podcast, right? This is kind of one of my marketing things. I'm telling you, your recruiters that are embracing social media are killing it. Like they are creating content that's the right stuff. They're creating the content that I think would inspire young men and women to want to become part of, our tribe as Marines. I'm just wondering, do you have visibility on, is that being encouraged, or is it an individual adoption rate, or is there is CD helping out, like getting people going with social media or anything? Or?
So I think I encourage it. I follow, a lot of these, captains or, recruiters out there. I'll follow them. And I don't actively have a policy that encourages it, but I will certainly comment occasionally, like what I'm seeing, and, encourage. So I guess by actions, I'm supporting it. And I'm seeing the content that they're putting out there. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
Some of it is just really good. And it's imaginative, it's creative, and it's creating that brand awareness and highlighting the significance of the decision these young men and women of character are making to serve their country in the Marine Corps. And on the officer side, to serve as leaders of Marines, right? And when the officer selection officers make a post on this or post on how they're doing it or they're working out with this team and how they're inspiring the future, I agree. I'm not as savvy on it as some of these captains are, so I don't try to create imaginative content myself and put it out there, but I certainly support what they're doing.
Yeah. Do you have a CD person on
We
your
do.
staff?
We have a whole marketing and advertising section. We have a CD section. Yeah. And they're good. And Marine Corps Recruiting Command has its page. I'm more like to support and enable and let them do it because they're in frontline contact.
Well, I just watched. So some of these, you've got Captain Winnefeld up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, doing great work
and
up
his
there.
staff sergeant, those guys are on it all the time.
All the time.
And then I see Cagney out of Pittsburgh, Moore, Folin, those. I see those names and those people embracing social
Wall,
media.
Abigail, in 8th District, was just 8th District or OSO of the year for 8th District.
Oh, I got to find her page then.
She's out there. No, they all, most of them are out there and they're putting good content out there.
Yeah, it's really.
And it's working for
them.
I
see it and I'm like, that would inspire me to join.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's really awesome. Let's wrap up with talking about MCRIC involvement with the 250th, because this is a big deal. I'm a part of it with the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation. We've got our effort with that and everything, but man, what an opportunity to really highlight the Marine Corps on the national stage right now. It's got to be helping. It's got to be beneficial to recruiting.
I think so. I think just the history of our Corps, right? General Jason Bohm, my basic school roommate, dear friend of mine, wrote that book, Washington's Marines.
Is he retired now?
He is.
Yeah.
He is.
What did he do? IG? What was his?
His last bill was the Inspector General of the Marine Corps. He is now the Dean of the School of Government at Liberty University.
That's where I saw his name.
Loving it.
Right.
He's crushing it out there. He's just doing great. But our Corps' history is really just fascinating, right? I mean, we had a Corps of Marines. Well, we really had a field grade officer, a general officer, a field grade officer. Congress created that resolution, right? The 2 battalions of Marines be created. Initially, they wanted Washington to provide them from the Continental Army. And Washington said, I need every Marine I've got for the siege of Boston. If you want these Marines, you're going to have to go find them yourselves. So they went out from, Tun Tavern and then Western Pennsylvania and the farm, and they cobbled together 2 battalions of Marines. But, that initial foundation of the Corps resembled America at the time.
Yeah.
And the country had a Corps of Marines before we ever had a field grade officer, before we ever had a general officer, we had a Corps of Marines that was ready to go get to work, and what, in 1776, when the revolution was almost, in its death throes, right? Is it at the Battle of Trenton, right? In the Battle of Princeton, it was Marines who fixed bayonets, drove the redcoats from the field at the Battle of Mercer's Field up there. So 250 years of making Marines winning battles, returning better citizens, I think is certainly something to celebrate. The Heritage Foundation and the communication, CD for Headquarters Marine Corps have a great plan. MCRIC is going to be a part of that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a great opportunity for the country to celebrate its Marines.
Yeah.
And Dave, we are getting young men and women of character to want to become Marines.
And we always have.
And we always have. The magnetic forces out there, right?
Right.
The 3,300 Marines servicing as canvassing recruiters, officer selection officers, right? The magnetic forces out there are working at attracting and inspiring the right young men and women of character who want to live a life of significance to become Marines.
Well, the influence that you and your command and your men and women have on the Marine Corps as an institution is huge, because if you think about this, time zero right now, you've got all your men and women out there recruiting, the next Marines to come in the door. And there are Marines that they will recruit that will stay in for 30 or more years.
Yeah.
And some of the future recruiters have recently become recruiters, and they're going to remember. So your men and women right now are going to have a 60-year legacy touch point on the Marine Corps in the next 60 years. Right?
That's scary. Yeah, that's
right. I mean, when you
to
think
even
about it,
right?
Your influence and your entire chain of command, the influence that they have on the institution will be felt for 60 years.
Wow.
So 2080-ish.
Yeah.
Your legacy is still going to.
Well, I mean, the Marines.
Well, your command's legacy is,
MCRIC's Marine Corps Recruiting Command's legacy, the lifeblood of the Corps.
Yeah.
Right. Attracting and inspiring the future of the Corps. And they're doing it with a happy heart. And that's what's most important to me is you got to do it with a happy heart,
Yeah.
Do it with a happy heart, and you're feeling good about watching the change in young people's lives. That really the Marines are starting the transformation process, right? We all know the transformation, right? And then comment on just re-release, sustaining the transformation, how it's incumbent on all Marines to sustain this transformation, but the recruiters start it.
Yeah.
And they start it by being good Marines out there on the streets and schools of America.
Yeah. There's also the component, you probably don't talk about this very much, it just dawned on me, but there's a responsibility of the Marine veteran community too, right? Like, because you're part of the legacy of the Marine Corps and talking about your experience, like me and that guy Nick from yesterday, like just that whole aspect of it too. Your recruiters have an awesome product to air quotes sell.
Yeah.
And that's why, you don't join the Marine Corps, you become a Marine.
You become a Marine.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
I've said, I don't know where I picked this saying up. It entered my lexicon. I've been saying it. I feel like it's been my whole career. Being a Marine isn't something you do. It's something you are. I've always said that to every command I've ever had. I think it's actually on the back of the coin that I gave you.
Yeah.
But it's really true.
Love it. Yeah.
Right. Like my 11 people that work here, they see Dave Armstrong, the boss, but they also say like, yeah, Dave's a Marine.
Right.
They don't say Dave used to be a Marine.
Right.
Oh, hey, meet my boss.
That's
He's they're like, yeah, Dave, he's a Marine.
Yeah. And we see when the veteran community is very strong and supportive. We see that wherever we go.
Right.
There are veterans out there who are actively working for us, who almost have a sense of ownership in, seeing the Corps continue.
That's my point, right?
To get high quality people.
Yeah. Because, hey, once a Marine, always a Marine. I know it's a little cliche, but the men and women that are meeting with your recruiters today and tomorrow and next week are being interviewed to become part of our lifelong tribe, which I feel like is the strongest magnet of all the services, with no disrespect to the other services, right? But like, if I saw an Air Force guy and an Army guy standing next to each other in their camis, I'd have to look at their name tape to see which service they were in. Marines, distinguishable all the time. Right. Even in iconic, nasty photos from Fallujah with a cigarette hanging out of your mouth, you could tell a Marine from an Army guy. Awesome. Well, you must be really proud of yourself, and I'm proud to be your friend. I'll like be a little bit of a emotional moment here, but like, I'm proud of you, man. Like, you and I were lieutenants together, and look at you sitting here as a 2-star general. Like, it's awesome, man. And what you're doing to make sure that we keep getting good Marines coming in the door. Thanks.
Well, proud of the team.
Yeah, sure, of course. But
I just say, make sure, like, we had fun when we were lieutenants,
we
right?
Really
we had fun.
Right.
It was some fun times surfing Tamarack Avenue,
talk about them on
right?
Podcast,
Blast offs out there,
exactly,
right? Yeah, I mean, it's okay to go to a Social Distortion concert or a Hootie and the Blowfish, right? I mean,
I learned this from General Alfred after I had to edit his podcast 4 times, because there is no statute of limitations on anything you did on activity until you're retired. So we're not going to talk about our lieutenant times until you're out on the podcast. But
we had a lot of fun.
And we did have a lot of fun.
It is great being a Marine. It is fun being a Marine.
It is fun. This is my connection. I miss it so much. This is how I stay connected with it. So.
Yeah.